On my wedding night, I pretended to pass out from drinks. My husband called his ex-wife and begged her to come. What they did next made me burn my wedding dress. My name is Emma Parker. I am 28. I always thought my life would be simple and kind. I loved small things, a quiet cup of tea in the morning, sunlight on the kitchen table, and the way Mark smiled when he heard a silly joke. I dreamed of a gentle life with someone who would be steady and safe. I never imagined my wedding night would become the loudest, worst memory of my life. The worst moment happened fast. We had danced all evening. People cheered. The music had been loud and bright and full of happiness. My dress was white and heavy with lace. My cheeks hurt from smiling. Mark kissed me in front of his parents and my friends. Everything looked like a fairy tale. Later, after everyone left, I felt dizzy. Maybe it was the champagne, or the heat, or the tiredness from months of planning. I told Mark I was tired and that I wanted to lie down for a minute. He said, "Okay, baby. I'll get you water." I sank onto the bed and closed my eyes. The room smelled like flowers and his aftershave and the little cake we had not finished. I wanted to sleep, to float away from all the excitement. But I was not sleeping. I had been thinking about small things for days, phone calls that came late, messages that disappeared too fast, the way Mark sometimes stared at his phone and smiled with his lips closed, like he was remembering someone else. My stomach felt like a small empty room. I told myself I was silly. I told myself love was trusting. But something in my chest did not let me rest. So I pretended. I pretended to pass out from the drinks. I let my body go soft and limp like a rag. I let my breathing slow. I let my hand fall off the bed so it looked real and easy. I wanted to hear. I wanted to know. I wanted to see if the man I had just promised to spend my life with would be honest with me. Mark stood up and walked to the bathroom. He went in and came out fast. He put water on my lips. He patted my face. He called my name like a tiny bell. Then he turned on his heel and walked out of the room. I heard the door click. My heart hit my ribs like a drum. A phone screen glowed from the hallway. Mark was holding his phone like it was a small animal. He stared at it and his face changed. His smile slipped. He spoke low, like the house could hear every secret. "Jessica," he said into the phone, and my whole body froze. Jessica, the ex-wife. The ghost that lived in his past and sometimes walked in our house as a memory. I had met her once months ago. She had been polite and quick to laugh, like a person who had learned to hide the hard things. He talked fast. I could not hear every word, but I heard this. "Please. Can you come over? Now. I need you. Please, Jess." I felt cold like an ice cube under my skin. He begged her. He begged his ex-wife to come to our bedroom on our wedding night. He sounded small. He sounded like a different man. A car door slammed outside. My ears hummed. I watched the door to the bedroom light up as someone walked toward our house. The sound of her heels on the porch made the air in my chest tighten. He opened the door to the hall and I heard voices, soft and quick. A laugh that sounded like it belonged to the past. A whisper. Mark's voice asking, "Are you sure?" "It's late." Her voice saying, "I told you I would be there." They walked in together. They did not whisper in the hallway. They came into the room close to each other, like magnets that still fit. Her dress was dark and beautiful. She smelled of coffee and rain. She smiled a smile that looked like memory. Mark's face lit up like sunrise. He lifted the hem of my dress with 2 fingers and held it like a secret he was sharing with her. Then they did something I will never forget. They slipped the veil right off the hanger and placed it gently over her hair. Jessica laughed like someone who had won a small, private game. Mark helped her into my shoes, the ones I had walked down the aisle in a few hours earlier. They stood in the middle of the room and took a picture together on Mark's phone. They were both smiling like children who had found a hidden candy jar. Then they took the cake knife and cut another slice of cake, and Jessica fed Mark a piece, slow and sweet. He closed his eyes and bit. He reached out and brushed frosting on her cheek, and she wiped it away with her thumb. They kissed, soft and quick, then laughed and kissed again like it had always been normal between them. The sewing of my dress felt like a thing they could move around. The sight punched the air out of me. My mouth opened, but no sound came. I felt the fake faintness I had been holding like a lid suddenly break. My breath returned, but it trembled like a small bird. Something in my chest broke like a glass. I should have stormed out. I should have let the world see him. I should have screamed and made the whole house wake up and know. Instead, I lay there, still pretending, while my whole life rearranged itself into something I did not recognize. Mark and Jessica moved closer to the bed. They did not look ashamed. They looked happy, and that was worse. Mark whispered something and Jessica laughed, a tiny happy sound that stabbed my ear. She lifted my wedding veil and placed it again on her head like a queen taking a crown. She twirled a little and the light caught the lace. Mark took a picture of her and saved it like a small treasure. I felt my fingers reach for the edge of my dress without thinking. I wanted to tear the lace, to ruin the pictures, to do anything to stop the quiet joy between them. But I held stiller than the world. I would not make a scene. I would not give them the satisfaction. Then Jessica turned toward the window. She held the veil so the light came through it like a halo. She smiled at Mark. He smiled back. They looked like a secret that had been waiting for them both. Jessica began to hum the song we had danced to earlier. They started to slow dance in the middle of our bedroom. I felt my vision go black around the edges. The hum became a roar. The wedding dress under me felt like a heavy stone. There were footsteps in the hall. A neighbor came in to check on the noise. Someone stopped at the door and asked in a soft voice if everything was all right. Mark waved them away with kindness, like he was protecting a memory. The neighbor left, shaking his head. Jessica and Mark did not stop. The biggest, loudest part of the night was not the reception anymore. It was a quiet, small thing. Two people who had once been married, standing in my room, wearing my veil and my shoes, laughing quietly and taking pictures of themselves with my phone. I felt like my own body was an outsider watching. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell the truth. But instead I lay there, breath shallow, heart pounding like a drum in an empty hall. I could hear the clink of the cake plates, the soft rustle of lace, Mark's phone tapping as he saved photograph after photograph. Each tap felt like a drop of water on my skin. Then the screen went dark. They turned the lights down. Jessica kissed Mark again and said something I could not make out. Mark laughed and, in that laugh, I heard the thing that killed me more than the kiss, contentment. He sounded content with her presence. He sounded at home. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand. My fingers knocked it off and it fell to the floor with a soft thump. The sound woke the room like a tiny alarm. Jessica and Mark looked up. For one terrible second, everything froze. I closed my eyes and pretended again to be gone. My face was wet, but I did not know if it was sweat or tears. I wanted to see more, to know more, but also to stop, to run away and hide until it did not hurt. The door closed softly behind them. Their laughter faded down the hall like a song on the radio. I waited for a long time, listening for the sound of car doors, for boots on gravel, for anything that would tell me they were really gone. My chest hurt in a way I had never felt before. When I finally forced myself to stand, my legs shook. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. My face looked pale and small in the mirror. I looked at the dress on the chair and for a second I could not remember the person who had chosen it. Then I remembered everything. I thought of how kind Mark had been to my mother when she had been sick. I thought of the ring he had given me, how his hands had trembled when he slid it on my finger. I thought of his voice saying, "I love you," in front of our families. I thought of the way he promised to build a life with me. I had not seen any real sign of betrayal before that moment. He had never raised his hand to me. He had never lied about where he was. He had said he loved me in the honest way people do when they are certain. But the sight of them together, my veil on her head, my shoes on her feet, the cake on her face, felt like a story that had been written without me. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried. I cried out of lost trust, out of stupid hope, and out of a small shame that I had not seen it sooner. Then I began to think about what to do next. I could tell everyone. I could make a scene at the breakfast table in front of my parents. I could burn his shirts in the yard and call the police. I could move out right then and there. I could ask for a divorce and live with neighbors who would give me tea until I felt steady again. Or I could watch and listen and gather the truth. I wanted to be sure before I let the world fall apart. I wanted facts, not stories I told myself in the dark. I wanted proof. So that is what I planned. I decided to wait until morning and then see his messages, his photos, and his call history. I would not act out of raw pain. I would be smart. I would be kind to myself. I went to the living room and found the small box where we kept extra candles and matches for emergencies. I lit a single candle and sat down at the kitchen table. The flame made a small warm circle on the table. I thought the candle would make me feel brave. It did not. Someone knocked on the front door. My breath stuck in my throat for a beat and then fell into a slow, aching rhythm. I did not get up. The knocking stopped and then returned, harder this time. A voice from outside called my name. Emma? Are you awake? I heard a noise. Is everything okay? It was Ryan, the neighbor from the left house. His voice was worried. I thought of him and then of the quiet neighbor who had stopped by earlier. For a moment I felt ridiculous for pretending to be asleep. I wanted help, but I also did not want to let the world see the rawness I felt. I blew the candle out. When I did, something happened I did not expect. A spark jumped from the wick to the edge of the lace of my dress that had been draped over a chair. The light was small and stupid, like a tiny animal. The lace caught the spark and for a heartbeat it smoked. I lunged up and slapped at it. The lace smoked more. The smell of burnt fabric filled the room. I grabbed the dress and threw it into the sink. The lace began to curl at the edges. My fingers were shaking and my mind was a whitewash. That small flame looked like a sign. It looked like a choice I could make in the moment. I could save the dress from the singe and pretend nothing had happened. I could tuck it in the closet and go on like someone who had not seen the photograph on Mark's phone. Or I could let the fire grow and watch the thing that had been stained by his betrayal burn into ashes and memory. Before I could decide, the knock on the door came again, louder, and then the door handle turned. Someone went into the kitchen, and the lights in the hallway came on. The house sounded like it was waking up. My heart hammered so hard I thought the neighbors would hear it. I had one small choice to make in that split second, and it felt like the whole world was balanced on it. I stood in the kitchen, the dress smoking in the sink, and listened to the sound of Mark's laugh through the thin wall, somewhere down the hall, out of sight. The smell of burnt lace made my eyes water. My hands trembled. A new, sharp sound came from the bedroom, a phone snapping a picture. The click felt like a gunshot. I had not decided yet what to do with the dress. I had not decided whether to tell my family or to leave quietly. I had not decided whether to scream or to forgive. But the lace in the sink curled more. A small flame threatened to leap again. The door swung open and someone stepped inside the kitchen. The chapter ends here with the sound of a match striking and the glint of a lighter in the hand of the person who just entered. The person in the kitchen held a small silver lighter. For a second, I did not know if it was a friend or an enemy. The lighter flashed in the dark like a small star. The person's face came into view. It was Ryan, my neighbor. His hair was messy and his shirt was inside out like he had rushed from bed. He looked worried. He looked tired. He looked like someone who did not want trouble. He saw the dress in the sink and the thin thread of smoke curling up from the lace. He looked at me like he had seen something sad in a movie. He whispered, "Emma." His voice was low. He said it like a question and like he already knew the answer. I felt my face go hot. My hands were still shaking. The wedding ring on my finger felt heavy and cold. For a moment I sat on the kitchen chair and did not move. The house around us smelled of burnt sugar and perfume. The table was a small island of light and shadow. Ryan took a step closer and then stopped. He did not touch me. He held the lighter in his hand like it was a small lifeline. "Do you want me to put it out?" he asked. "I can get water. I have a fire extinguisher in my car." I looked at him. He was kind. He was not judgmental. He was only a neighbor who had heard a noise and come to help. That made my throat hurt more. "No," I said. My voice was small and flat. "I don't want to put it out." Ryan blinked. "You don't want to put it out?" "No," I said again. "Let it burn." He looked at me like I was a stranger. "Emma, are you sure?" I was sure in the way a person is sure when their hands are clean after washing away something sticky. I was sure in the way a person is sure when they decide to close a door and walk away from a room they have loved. The sure feeling was warm and dry and quiet. Yes, I said, and I reached for the lighter in his hand. Ryan did not pull it away. He watched my face as if trying to read a map. My fingers touched the metal and it was warm. I flicked it open. The small blue flame jumped up like a happy insect. It lit the tiny black wick of the candle on the table, and then I touched the flame to the corner of my veil that had been charred. The fabric burned quickly. The lace shrank and curled and turned black. A smell like old paper and sweet flowers filled the kitchen. My eyes watered. For a second, the only sound was the little hiss of the flame and my breath. Ryan stayed very still. I thought he might take the lighter back, but he did not. He looked at me and his mouth made a swallow of surprise and then something soft like pity. I held the burning lace and watched it change. Parts turned to ash and floated away in the air. It felt like a small ceremony. I remembered the day I had tried the dress on, the way I had laughed at how grown up I looked. I remembered my mother's hands when she helped me zip the dress. I remembered Mark's face when he first saw me step down the aisle. All of that was like a picture in a book. The edges of the picture were singed now. The center had a hole. I kept burning until the dress in the sink was more ash than fabric. I kept burning until the edges glowed red like a heart. When the last piece fell away, my hands were a little sore from holding the lighter too long. The candle on the table had dropped a small black dot of wax onto the wooden surface. The flame had not spread. It had not become a monster. Ryan handed the lighter back to me and said, softly, "I'm sorry, Emma." He left the lighter on the table and walked to the sink. He put his hand under the running tap and splashed cold water onto the black pile. The water hissed and turned gray. He put the wet cloth over the ashes and pressed it down like he wanted to bury something important. I watched him move. He seemed steady and simple and very human. We sat in the kitchen while the house slept around us. The clock on the wall ticked like a tiny judge. I felt empty and tired and more awake than ever. The worst thing had happened, and the worst thing had not yet been spoken of. The dress was gone. The meaning of the night had been burned into little black dust. I thought of Mark. I thought of how he had laughed and how his face had shone earlier. I thought of the way he had begged Jessica to come. I thought of the phone calls and the pictures. I thought of the little pleasure he had taken in making her wear my veil. I thought of how quickly he had become small and different. Ryan sat across from me, his hands folded like he was praying without words. He had come because he had heard a noise. He had stayed because he saw me sitting at the table with the cigarette smell of my wedding night in the air. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. "No," I said. "But thank you." He nodded and stood. He did not kiss my cheek or offer a long speech. He wrapped his sweater around his shoulders like it was a shield and left. I watched him walk down the short path to his house. The night air swallowed him up. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his silhouette fade into darkness. After the neighbor left, I had a small, quiet moment of thinking. I realized that burning the dress had not fixed anything. Burning the dress had not made Mark suddenly honest. Burning the dress had not made Jessica disappear. Burning the dress had not changed the sound of his laugh. But burning the dress had done one thing. It had given me a small sharp choice in a night that had felt like a long slow trap. It was a small thing I had done for me and only me. The house was quiet and I wanted to be alone. I went to our bedroom door and for a second my hand shook on the knob. I thought of going to him and shouting until my throat hurt. I thought of waking the whole neighborhood and telling every person who had eaten at our table what had happened. I thought of calling my mother and saying the words, "I am leaving," and then listening to her small soft cry over the phone. I thought of calling Mark's father and telling him what had happened. I thought of making a scene so big that it would be written into the walls of the house and never forgotten. I did not do any of those things. Instead, I walked slowly into the bedroom and sat on the bed. The bed looked the same as it always had: 2 pillows, a neatly folded throw, a small lamp on the side. The dress I had worn for hours was no longer there. The picture frames on the dresser seemed to be smiling at me for the life we had not yet lived. My phone vibrated on the bedside table. I did not pick it up. I lay back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling. I thought about small things. I thought about how Mark's thumb had a small soft scar from when he was a boy. I thought about the joke he always told and how it made me laugh. I thought about the ring on my finger and how it had felt heavy with promise. I put my hand over the ring and felt the cold metal. I thought of Jessica and the way she had smiled at him that night. I thought of the photographs they had taken and how the picture of them would probably stay on his phone until it was lost or deleted or until he felt guilty enough to remove it. My phone buzzed again. I could not stop my hand from reaching for it. I picked it up and saw a message from my mother. Did you sleep? Call me when you can. Love you. I read it and felt a hot sting in my chest. I wanted to call her and tell her everything, but I did not. I put the phone down and turned it face down on the bed. My heart felt like a small animal trapped in a jar. I could hear the slow tick of the clock in the living room. I could hear the heater kicking on and off. A soft sound came from the hallway, the rustle of clothes, the low hum of the dryer someone had left on downstairs. I thought it came from Mark, but then the sound changed and I realized it was a small noise like someone moving a box. I sat up and listened. There was silence for a long time, then the faint click of the lock on the front door. Had Mark gone back to Jessica's house? Had she left? Was he coming back? My mind made small pictures, their laughter, the phone in his hand, the way Jessica had looked in my veil. The night felt endless. I decided to write something. I went to the small desk in the corner where I kept a notebook. My handwriting is messy when I am upset, but writing makes the noise in my head quieter. I picked up a pen and wrote 3 lines. I saw them. He begged her to come. I burned the dress. The sentences looked very small on the paper. I folded the page and tucked it into the notebook like a secret. Then I closed the book and put it in the drawer. The drawer clicked shut like a final small sound. It was late and I felt too tired to sleep. I moved to the couch in the living room and wrapped a blanket around my legs. I turned on the small lamp and let a little light spill into the room. I thought about what to do in the morning. I wanted to check his phone for calls and messages. I wanted to look for the photos he had taken. I wanted to ask him why he would bring his ex-wife into our house like she belonged there. I wanted to understand the shape of the choices he had made. I closed my eyes for a moment, and the quiet of the house wrapped around me. I heard the old wooden floor settle and thought of small things that had nothing to do with betrayal. I thought of the muffins my mother used to make and the way my father would whistle in the kitchen. I thought of being small and thinking the world would always be kind. A noise woke me. It was not loud. It was a soft thump like someone closing a book too fast. I sat up and the blanket fell down to my lap. The living room was dim. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. The house seemed to hold its breath. There was another noise, this time sharper. It came from the bedroom, an angry, hurried voice that I did not know at first. It sounded like Mark, but deeper, like someone trying to sound big and stern. Then a woman's voice answered him. Her voice was small and quick and filled with a strange kind of calm. Emma, the woman called like she was checking someone's name on a list. I felt the blood leave my face. I felt the blanket catch under my nails. My heart pounded against my ribs. The voices moved closer. They were in the hallway now. My hand trembled on the sofa. I wanted to stand and go to the bedroom door and open it wide and let the truth fall out like bright paper confetti. I wanted to yell and make noise and wake everyone in the street. I wanted to do all the things that people say they will do when they are hurt. I did not move. The bedroom door opened and the light from the hall painted a long rectangle across the carpet. 2 shadows stood in the doorway, Mark and a woman. The woman wore a coat and her hair was pulled back. She looked like she had just been outside. Mark looked tired and like a man who had been smiling a lot and had then lost the ability to keep smiling. They did not see me in the living room right away. The woman, Jessica, said something in a low voice and Mark laughed quietly. They moved into the bedroom and closed the door. For a moment, I thought my eyes must be playing tricks. Maybe they were talking about something small and harmless. Then I heard the soft clink of glass and the sound of a camera. I felt my skin go cold in a way that is not from the air. Someone took a picture. The click was small, but it hit me like a hammer. I stood up. My legs felt like they were made of cotton. I walked toward the bedroom door with slow steps, like someone stepping through snow. My hand reached for the knob. My heart beat so loud I thought the whole house could hear it. I pressed my ear to the wood and listened. They were talking in low voices. Mark said something about leaving and about promises. Jessica laughed softly and said, "You always knew how to make me feel special." Mark said, "I didn't plan for this to happen tonight." She said, "It just felt right." My hand tightened on the knob until my knuckles white. I wanted to open the door and throw the light on and show them my face. I wanted to scream until the window glass broke. I wanted to break everything and start again. I did not open the door. I took a single step back and sat down on the floor with my back against the wall. I felt a strange lightness and a heavy weight at the same time. I had burned the dress. I had chosen a small act that belonged only to me. But there was a much larger thing happening in the house, a storm that could wash away everything. The chapter ends with the sound of a small match being lit in the bedroom and the soft exhale of someone who is about to do something big. The sound of that match being struck inside my bedroom did something strange to my chest. It was soft, gentle even, yet it felt like thunder had been dropped into the middle of my ribs. I pressed my back harder against the wall, trying to steady my breath. The house seemed to freeze around me. Even the heater stopped humming, as if the walls themselves were waiting for what would happen next. A warm glow slipped under the bedroom door, thin as a ribbon. Then I heard Jessica's voice low, almost playful. "Don't worry. It's just a candle." A candle. On my wedding night. Lit by my husband and the woman he left before me. My stomach twisted. I knew I should walk in. I knew I should confront them. But I also knew something else. The more they forgot I was there, the more truth they would show me. The real kind. The kind people hide when you are looking straight at them. So I stayed on the floor, my knees pulled to my chest, my heartbeat tapping against my ear like a drum someone hadn't learned to play. Inside the room, Jessica laughed, a soft laugh, the kind someone makes when they feel safe with a person they shouldn't. Mark hushed her, whispering, "Keep your voice down." But he wasn't angry. He was amused. Comfortable. My fingers dug into the carpet. Jessica said, "You know this used to be our song," and I heard the faint buzz of music from Mark's phone. A familiar one. Our first dance song. The one he said he had chosen for us. I closed my eyes and pressed my forehead against my knees. The room spun a little. Images from earlier, him feeding her cake, her wearing my veil, mixed against the sound of that soft music. It felt like someone was peeling the skin off my memories one layer at a time. I heard the mattress sink a little as someone sat. Then Mark's voice, gentle, almost pleading. I didn't think she would fall asleep so fast. They were talking about me. Jessica hummed. Emma always seemed delicate. Quiet. Not your usual type. My throat tightened. Not his usual type. But I had tried. I had given him softness because he told me he needed it. I had loved him gently because he said life had been too loud before me. I had believed him when he said he wanted peace, calm, steadiness. Now he spoke like I was a mistake on paper. A small wrong mark. She's good, Mark said, as if that was something you said about a neighbor's polite child. She tries, you know? She's thoughtful. She's just, not you. There it was. Not you. The 3 words that silenced the last small hope inside me. Jessica sighed and I heard the bedsheets shift. I missed you, she whispered. And I think you missed me too. He didn't answer right away, and for a second, I prayed he would deny it. I prayed he would say he had moved on. I prayed he would say her name didn't make his chest twist the way it used to. But then I heard his voice, low and tired. I did. Everything inside me went still. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there with the pain like it was water rising up around me. Slow. Heavy. Cold. I let it climb from my feet to my chest. I didn't fight it. I deserved to know the truth. And now I knew it all. A soft tap came next, a kiss. Quick. Then another. The sound of a memory coming back to life under my roof. My roof. My wedding night. My world. I pressed the back of my hand against my mouth to keep from making any sound. I didn't want them to know I was there. Not yet. The shadows under the door danced as they moved. The candlelight flickered like it was laughing at me. For a moment, I felt like a ghost in my own life. Then Jessica said something strange. You kept it, she whispered. You kept the letters. Letters? My heart froze. Mark answered too fast. I didn't know how to throw them away. Letters. Letters from her. Letters he told me he had burned. Letters he told me he didn't care about. Letters he said were just memories that don't matter anymore. I felt something inside me begin to wake. Not anger. Not yet. Something sharper. Something stronger. Something that felt like the opposite of being delicate. A low crack sounded inside the room, like a drawer being opened. A shuffle of paper. Jessica's laugh. You really kept everything. Everything. My breath shook. A soft thump against the bed frame followed. Then Jessica's voice, warm and full. You never stopped loving me, did you? Mark didn't answer. The silence said enough. I rose from the floor slowly, quietly. My knees ached from sitting too long. My fingers brushed against the wall so lightly the paint didn't even feel it. I took 2 steps back from the door. I stood in the hallway, staring at the thin golden line of candlelight glowing from beneath the door, drawing a bright shape across the carpet. Something inside me hardened. I didn't want to be delicate anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone. My wedding dress was gone, burned away by my own hands. And somehow the ashes had made me see clearer. I wasn't the weak one here. I wasn't the foolish one. I wasn't the person sneaking around in the dark, betraying a promise I had made hours ago. No. I was the one standing. Breathing. Witnessing. Alive. And if Mark thought he could play in shadows while I slept, he had no idea what kind of storm a quiet woman could become. I stepped away from the bedroom and walked toward the kitchen, my feet silent on the cold floor. The smell of burnt lace still hung in the air. The window showed the dark street outside, and in the distance I could faintly see Jessica's car parked halfway between 2 street lights, waiting like a shadow. I didn't want to cry, but my vision blurred anyway. Tears slid hot and angry down my cheeks. I wiped them away with the heel of my palm. I didn't want to give the night that satisfaction. A new noise came from the bedroom, this time harder. A thud. Then Mark's raised voice. Jessica, stop. A crash. I froze in the kitchen doorway. I heard another noise like something falling off the dresser. Then Jessica's voice, sharp and wild for the first time tonight. You're lying. You never loved her. My heart jumped. I turned. Another crash. Something big. Heavy. My breath caught in my throat as the house shook with the noise. Jessica screamed. Mark shouted her name. Then, silence. Not the gentle kind. The dangerous kind. The chapter ends here as I stand in the dark hallway, frozen in place, realizing something extreme has just happened behind that closed bedroom door. The silence after that crash felt wrong. It wasn't normal silence. It was the kind that stretches the air and makes the house feel colder than it should. My heart thudded once, twice, then sped so fast I could hear it in my ears. I stared at the closed bedroom door, my breath trapped somewhere between my ribs and my throat. Mark. I whispered. No answer. Jessica. Still nothing. A cold rush climbed up my back. My feet moved before my mind caught up. I stepped into the hallway, every board under me creaking like it was warning me not to go further. The candlelight under the door flickered wildly, like the flame inside was shaking. Another thud sounded, but this time softer. Not like someone throwing something. More like something being dragged. My stomach tightened. I reached the door and put my hand on the knob. My fingers trembled so badly I almost missed the metal. I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. What I saw didn't make sense at first. Jessica was on the carpet. Not hurt, just sitting there, knees pulled up, breathing like she had run a mile. Her hair was messy, the candlelight glowing against her cheek. Something had fallen, a whole stack of boxes from our closet was spilled across the floor. Letters, photos, envelopes scattered everywhere. Love letters. The ones Mark told me he destroyed. My breath hitched. Mark was kneeling beside her, not touching her, but close enough. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't even embarrassed. He looked tired. Tired in a way that told me this wasn't a sudden problem. This was old. Worn. Familiar. Jessica ran her hand through her hair and said, "So you were lying. You kept all of it. Everything." Mark didn't look at her. He didn't look at me either. He stared at the letters on the floor like each one was a door he had shut but never locked. I didn't want to hurt her, he said. Her. Me. His voice was low. Not apologetic. Not guilty. Just tired. Jessica stood slowly, brushing her hands on her jeans. You married someone else while you still had this, she said, pointing to the scattered letters. You married her while still holding on to us. I stepped further inside the room without even realizing. Mark looked up at that moment, and when his eyes met mine, his whole face changed. Shock. Fear. Then something colder. Guilt. It spread across his face like ink in water. Emma, he whispered, standing too fast. Jessica's eyes widened. She looked between us like she was trying to calculate whether she should run, explain, or stay silent. Tears welled in her eyes, not from regret, but from something deeper. Something like a truth she'd been trying to avoid. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Not a scream. Not a question. Nothing. Just silence. Mark stepped toward me, hands out like he was trying to touch the air before touching me. Emma, I can explain. You don't have to, I said, my voice flat and too calm for how my body felt. I heard everything. Jessica pressed her lips together, her jaw trembling. She didn't try to defend herself. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look away. Mark looked like a man suddenly drowning. Emma, listen. No. He stopped speaking. My eyes moved to the letters on the floor. Old envelopes with Jessica's handwriting. Notes. Polaroid pictures. Moments that did not belong in my marriage. One letter, partially open, had the words "I miss the sound of your laugh" written in looping handwriting. My heart twisted. For a moment, everything inside me went hollow. Then something warm filled the hollow space. Strength. My voice was quiet, but it felt different. Stronger. Like it finally came from someone who had stopped begging life to be gentle. I want you to pack, I said softly. Mark's mouth fell open. Emma, wait, please. Jessica took a small breath. Mark, maybe you should. He snapped his head toward her like she had betrayed him just by saying it. But she wasn't being cruel. She looked ashamed. Not of herself, but of him. Of this entire mess she had stepped into. Emma, he said, turning back to me, can we talk about this like adults? No, I said. Because adults don't do what you just did. His face flushed red. He took a step closer. I made a mistake. One mistake. I laughed. A short, sharp, surprising laugh. One mistake? You begged her to come here tonight. You made her wear my veil. My shoes. You danced with her. You took pictures. You cut cake. You. My voice broke. Jessica looked away, her eyes shining. Mark lifted his hands like he wanted to hold me, to comfort me, to pretend he hadn't caused the wound himself. Emma, he whispered, I love you. No, you don't, I said. You love the idea of someone who won't question you. He froze. Jessica covered her mouth with her hand. Not crying, but shaken. For a moment, the room felt too full. The candle flickered hard and almost went out. Shadows trembled on the wall. My chest felt tight. I stepped back toward the hallway, needing space. Needing air. But then, bang. A loud slam came from downstairs. All three of us jumped. Mark's head whipped toward the hallway. Jessica stiffened. I felt a cold spike of fear shoot down my spine. Another sound followed. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Coming up the stairs. Jessica whispered, Did you invite someone else? Mark swallowed. No. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Steady. Slow. My heart pounded in my throat. Jessica took a step back, almost stumbling over the spilled letters. Mark looked at the bedroom door like it might burst open. The house felt too still. Too quiet. Then, a shadow appeared on the wall outside the bedroom door. A tall one. Moving toward us. None of us spoke. None of us breathed. The chapter ends here right as the shadow moves closer to the bedroom doorway and a deep voice says, Open the door. I know someone's awake in there. The voice outside the door was deep, calm, and mature, not angry, not rushed. But something about it made every hair on my arm stand up. The shadow stretched across the hallway wall, steady and unmoving, as if the person behind it already knew what they would find on the other side. Jessica gasped and stepped behind Mark like a child hiding from a teacher. Mark squared his shoulders, trying to look brave, but I could see the fear in his eyes. My own heart beat so loudly it drowned out the silence. "Open the door," the voice repeated. "I'm not leaving." Mark turned to me, whispering sharply, "Did you call someone?" "Emma, did you call someone?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I didn't call anyone." Jessica's whisper cracked. "Mark, who is that?" Mark didn't answer. The shadow outside the door shifted, then stilled again. Whoever it was, he wasn't going away. Then the doorknob turned. Not slowly. Not hesitantly. Deliberately. Firmly. The door opened just enough for the hallway light to spill inside, and standing there was a man I did not expect. Mark's father. Mr. Wilson. Tall. Older. A quiet, serious man with a face that rarely showed emotion. But tonight his expression was carved from stone. His gaze moved from me, to Mark, to Jessica, and finally to the mess on the floor. The letters, the spilled memories, the candle, the guilt thick in the air. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then he exhaled through his nose. A long, disappointed breath. "Mark," he said quietly, "do you have any idea what you've done?" Mark opened his mouth, but his father raised a hand, stopping him instantly. "I heard the neighbors talking," Mr. Wilson said. "I heard someone say your ex-wife showed up tonight. I came because I thought it had to be a misunderstanding." His eyes hardened. "But this? On your wedding night?" He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. Mark flinched like each word was a slap. Jessica stepped forward, shaking. "Mr. Wilson, I didn't mean." His father gave her a gentle shake of the head. "Jessica, you shouldn't be here. Not tonight. Not like this." His voice wasn't cruel, but it cut through the room like truth. She lowered her eyes. "Emma," Mr. Wilson said, turning to me now, his expression softening in a way I had never seen. "I am so sorry. You deserved better. You didn't deserve any of this." My throat tightened. Tears stung my eyes. Not because of his words, but because someone finally saw me. Someone finally acknowledged what was done to me. Mark stepped forward, desperate now. "Dad, stop. This is between me and Emma." "No," his father said, voice firm. "This is about who you are. Who you've chosen to be." He motioned around the room. "Look at this. Look at what you turned your marriage into in less than 12 hours. Jessica covered her face, tears slipping through her fingers. Mark looked trapped. Cornered. And yet, still trying to look like the victim. "I made a mistake," he muttered. "Okay. I messed up." His father shook his head. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is losing your temper during an argument. His voice grew heavy with disappointment. "This is betrayal." The word hung in the air like smoke. I felt it settle in my chest. Sharp. "True." Mark ran a hand through his hair. "Dad, please. Pack your things," his father said. "Now. I'll take you to my house tonight. You don't stay here another second." Mark turned pale. "What?" "No. This is my house." "No," his father said, voice rising for the first time. "This is her house now. You forfeited that the second you called another woman here on your wedding night." Mark looked at me with something between shock and pleading. "Emma, don't listen to him. This is our home. We can." "No," I said. His head snapped toward me. I met his eyes, and for the first time since the night began, I felt no fear. No shaking. No begging. Just clarity. "I want you to leave." Mark stared, broken and disbelieving. "You don't mean that." I straightened my shoulders. "I do." Jessica made a small sound, like a sob held back too tightly. She grabbed her purse from the chair, wiping her face as she hurried toward the door. But before she reached it, she turned to me. "Emma," she said softly. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. I didn't expect it to go this far. I thought he had moved on. Her eyes flicked to the letters on the floor, then back to me. "No one deserves this," she whispered. Not even a quiet, gentle girl. She slipped out the door with her head bowed. Mark swallowed hard, looking lost. "So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away?" I picked up one of the fallen letters and held it between us. "You threw everything away long before I did." His face crumpled, but I didn't soften. I didn't know softness anymore. I gave him one final look, a look that said I knew myself now. I knew what hurt, and I knew what I would never let hurt me again. Go, I said. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at his father. Mr. Wilson nodded toward the hallway. Mark finally moved. Defeated. Silent. Guilty. He gathered a small bag, nothing more, and left the bedroom without another word. I heard the front door open, then close. His footsteps faded into the night. When it was quiet again, the only person left in the room was Mr. Wilson. He stepped closer, his shoulders heavy with regret. Emma, he said softly, I cannot undo what my son has done. But I want you to know this, none of this was your fault. You loved him with honesty. He failed you with lies. My eyes filled with tears, but they were not the same tears from earlier. These were different. Lighter. Cleaner. He nodded once more, then stepped out, gently pulling the door closed behind him. Silence settled over the house again, but it wasn't cold anymore. It felt like a beginning. Not a pretty one. Not a gentle one. But a true one. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Mark was gone. Jessica was gone. The letters were still scattered on the floor like broken pieces of a story that no longer belonged to me. I picked them up one by one and dropped them into the trash. Not burned out of anger. Discarded out of peace. When I finished, I sat on the edge of the bed and took a slow, steady breath. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. I didn't know what my life would become. But I knew this. I survived the worst night of my life. And the woman who walked out of that night was stronger than the one who walked into it. I turned off the last light, pulled the covers over my legs, and whispered into the darkness. I will never let myself be small again. And with that, my story of betrayal ended. And my story of becoming began.